Hello everyone, and welcome to Pride in Action Stories. My name is Chris Bunting. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the staff co-representative on the Pride in Action Network Committee. And also at the university, I work at Melbourne University Sport. I'm the Pride and Diversity Coordinator there, and I run our Pride in Sport program, which focuses on the inclusion of LGBTQIA+ students within our sport and fitness services. And joining me today is my lovely colleague, Alex, and I'll get Alex to introduce himself to you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Affleck. I'm the Fitness Services Manager at Melbourne University Sport, and I've worked at the university and at Melbourne University Sport since the beginning of 2003.
Very nice. So we're here today, Alex, to talk about your experiences at the university and at MU Sport and as a member of the community, and just to really get insights into how you've found it since 2003, as you say, and how things might have changed. So I might start by asking you, what has your experience been like at the university, thinking way back to 2003 and thinking up until now, 2020, and how that may have changed over the years?
Well, first of all, thank you for making me feel so old, way back in 2003.
I won't tell you how old I was then, Alex.
I would have to say that I've had a pretty blessed time at the university, and part of that is probably because of the experiences that I brought with me when I started at the university. I think that most people, perhaps especially working in the field of sport, would feel somewhat reluctant about expressing their sexuality and coming out to colleagues and so forth. But my experience, I moved back to Australia in 2001 from Singapore. My partner came with me, and we had, he's from Canada, and we had just gone through with the Department of Immigration, a very long and drawn out process of trying to bring him in on an interdependency visa, which is what it was called at the time. I don't think it was called de facto, but it was, so that experience in many respects, I think started making me much more comfortable with being very open about who I was, because I felt like I needed to be that person. I needed to be more than just genuine in some ways with the immigration department. We had to be shining examples of a gay male couple. So we'd gone through that for 2 years, and having to provide evidence that we actually had a real relationship, that it wasn't just pretend. Providing statutory declarations to strangers about our relationship, providing strangers at the immigration department evidence of our relationship via birthday cards that we had given to each other. You lay your whole life on the line to people who know you, who don't know you.
Yeah.
So when I started work at the university, I pretty much was out, and it wasn't a party, it wasn't a morning tea where I had a big announcement to make to anyone. It was just that my partner's name was Rick, and this is what we did on the weekend. It was the water cooler discussion. So for me, it was a positive experience from the beginning. I'm sure there were people who were a little uncertain and unsure about, what that meant, because their own personal experience was, was probably not particularly broad, and probably didn't include terribly many, people who identified within the LGBTIQA+ community. So, so it was interesting, and it's probably been a learning curve for some of those people.
Yeah.
I went on leave in my second year, so in the middle of 2004, I went on leave, and I've got a really strong memory of sitting in the university cafe on Lygon Street,
Mm.
having a staff lunch, and my director at the time, Mark Bockey, a really lovely man, lovely gentleman, basically putting the lunch on and then saying, oh, the reason that we're having this lunch is because Alex and his partner Rick are flying to Canada tomorrow, and to get married. So it's a pretty kind of strong endorsement when the person who's the head of your department can, in such a comfortable and completely unrehearsed way, make an announcement like that in a cafe at Carlton. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't the first time I heard it, but it was very, it was a very comforting and positive experience for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story. It actually leads me on to my next prompt about allies, but before I go on to that, I just wanted to reflect on the process that you and Rick had to go through to get into Australia as a couple, and just reflect on what I find interesting about that is it's such an invasion of privacy, and you're right, you really have to bear yourself in a really authentic way to make that process happen. And I think it's kind of reflective of the fact that as LGBTI people, we go through these micro traumas almost throughout our lives, and while they're hard to get through, it makes us more resilient, and certainly in your case made you so much more confident, I guess, in being your full self and really wanting to do that. So I just want to reflect on that. I think it's really interesting. But that story about the director at time and allies, so what role have allies played over your journey at the university, and how important do you think that is?
I feel like in many respects that I never had to rely or seek out allies. I feel like the allies to the LGBTI community and to me were just there. And perhaps part of that is that you avoid people who don't provide a positive experience or reflection to your life. And therefore you gravitate towards those people who do. And, people sort of talk about editing their life. And, yes, I did exactly the same. I edited my life. From before I was an adult through until, I was in my 30s plus. So there's a long period of doing that, but the comfort that you can get out of being able to spend time with people who you don't have to explain yourself to is amazing. And I think it makes you a better person, but absolutely makes you a better employee, a better worker, because you don't have to spend time hiding who you are. And the people, you can go to the water cooler and you can say, I had this bad experience, and you don't have to do anything more than that just to get the support that anyone else would normally give another human being.
Absolutely. And it sounds like to you, allyship is more about those little things that people can do. It's that friendly face. It's that person that can just be someone who will listen to you and hear about things that you've gone through. It's great to be visible and to be shouting out loud as an ally. That's fantastic. But it's also those little things that people can do that can just make your experience at work so much more comfortable.
I think in some ways they are they're actually the most important things, because they don't happen once a year at a rally or at an event. Those little things can happen every single day. And, I would like to think that I give that support to people on a daily basis without them having to fish for it. And, the people who, the experiences that I've had with Melbourne University Sport, and it's a reasonably tight-knit department, the
Absolutely.
experiences I've had overall have been about providing those, you know, those micro levels of support, you know, the
Yeah.
indicator, the genuine interactions, rather than something which feels like I'm just asking you how your weekend was because that's the polite thing to do.
Mm.
Um,
I
you
completely
know,
agree, Alex. Like it's been my experience at MU Sport as well, and also for you personally, you know, you're always there to listen about my weekend and just ask those questions. So it's nice to see it both ways, I suppose. So
it's because I'm reliving my youth vicariously through you.
well, I like that you still think I'm youth, but all right, we're going to fast forward a few years now and think about, if I've got my years right, it would have been 2016 that you started thinking about the Pride in Sport program, which I'm lucky enough to now have as my day-to-day job, but really it was you that brought this whole program together. So I was just wondering if you could just reflect on that time and what really prompted you to come up with this idea and do all the groundwork to make it happen.
So I think all of this started, I mean, we probably started seeing pride rounds in sport come to the fore. Um, I don't know, I feel like it was probably the sort of 2010-ish type of
Mm,
time where they started becoming bigger news. And I think, and I could be wrong, it was either 2016 or 2015 that one of the university football clubs, so the University Blacks Football Club,
yeah.
I arrived back after having a holiday and visiting family in Canada. I arrived back to find an email in my inbox from one of the football club presidents basically saying, you know, we're planning on having a Pride match. And it was like in 2 weeks' time. And MU Sport hadn't really been included in the planning for this
Right.
at all. And I remember looking at it and thinking, I wish they had come to us to get some support because, you know, we had an opportunity not just to assist them, but to bring this back as a university event
Mm,
and to broadcast to all of the students at the university this amazing and wonderful and significant event that was going to be taking place on the University Oval in a few weeks' time. And so, even though it wasn't the area that I'm necessarily responsible for at MU Sport, I it was one of the first emails that I answered when I came back because I wanted to provide some level of support for what was going on and to indicate very, very quickly that MU Sport would sit very much in support of these kind of events. And it went off really well and it was great. And but after that, what I was concerned about more than anything else was that sporting events and pride rounds, as significant as they are, there was also a great risk of these becoming tokenistic.
mm,
And, you know, I mentioned before about it's all well and good to show support on you know, a pride round or at a rally or at a, you know, a gay and lesbian festival.
mm,
But when all of the confetti hits the ground, when the glitter fades away, is blown away on the wind, does that gay student who's playing football or basketball or soccer, do they still feel supported when
mm,
all the rainbows have been taken away?
mm.
And so I wanted to get involved in a program that could ensure that support for university students or for people in our clubs, you know, more generally, the broader university community would feel supported in this space, not just one round a year, that
Mm,
they would feel supported for the entire season, for the entire year, and that we didn't run the risk of offending people as well.
yeah.
by creating a tokenistic type of offering in sport. So I put forward the idea of requesting funding from the university to set up a one-year program that included having a pride and diversity resource in the form of a person who was working full-time across the year, not just with one club, not just with one event, but with a whole range of things. And to me, it made perfect sense that it wasn't about the party, it was much more about how we were going to lay out the foundation through policy, so that in the event that there ever was a problem, that a person who was feeling as though they had been vilified or was not getting the support that they needed to be the person that they genuinely were, we needed to have something that we could go back to and say, this is what our policy is, this is how we're going to support you, and this is how we're going to protect you, and this is how we're going to enable you to be the best person that you can be. And, it took a little bit of prodding on my part, because I think that some people didn't understand that it wasn't enough just to have a pride round, that we needed a bit more. And so I think, though, that, and credit to, Melbourne University Sport and to, our director, Tim, who got behind it and said, yeah, I'm happy for you to put that up. It sounds good. And, we were fortunate. The university, when they first came back, or because this was all funded through students as an amenities fee. The first time they came back, they said, couldn't this be done by someone else, that you've already got on staff? Why is there enough work for you to have a full-time person doing this role? And, couldn't it be done by, the sports coordinator or the activities coordinator type of thing? And, I know that you're aware of this, Chris, but I wasn't super happy with that response. And apparently, I think that they just asked the question and were prepared to give us the full funding anyhow. But I think I might have written a 5-page rebuttal to the way of thinking, because, I think to those of us who have grown up in this space, we know that supporting people is actually a full-time proposition in this space. And that's not just in their sporting endeavours. This is supporting people who are, on a journey to be their genuine selves. And you can't be there part-time.
Absolutely. And I think that's reflective of the fact that sport is a great thing. It's beneficial on so many levels for people in their health and their well-being. But sport traditionally has been structured in a way that really favours heteronormative thinking, and therefore it's part of it is cultural change, and that's what things like pride rounds and all that great stuff helps to do. But there are actual structural barriers in sport that make it very binary, that actually put up barriers to people within the community participating. And just credit to your persistence and thank you for all your work, because it's through that we've been able to address those barriers very directly at Melbourne University Sport. And I think the program is achieving those goals that you certainly had at the start when you came up with the concept.
I think I might have had the concept, but ultimately I think that, and I know that this is a pat on the back session that we're having between us right now. But, I couldn't have done what you've done, Chris, and that's, again, I would say that's more about our lived experiences and our understanding of the progress within our community over time. grew up in a time where it was just up to me. There was no support,
Yeah.
and sport was an avenue for me to survive,
Mm.
and you know, and it worked for me.
Yeah.
Because I was reasonably good at sport, and in my mind it was me proving that I was as good as everyone else,
Mm.
or better than other people,
Mm.
even though I was gay, type of
Mm.
thing, which has some really weird type of, I'm sure, psychological issues involved in it. But you know what? Part of that is that I wouldn't want someone else to have to go through that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And if there's a way of making that journey for another adolescent who is, struggling with who they are, if there's a way that that can be, made easier, even enjoyable,
Yeah.
and and certainly safer, then that's really good. And I know the value of sport, and I'm still passionate about sport.
Yeah.
For all of those reasons.
Sport's a great thing. We just need to connect it and the community, and I think we're getting there anyway.
Yeah, that's right. You chip away and you chip away, and
That's it.
People will, as we saw with the vote for marriage equality, if we encourage people, then people will come along for the ride with us, because
Yeah.
the more that we're available and accessible to people, it just helps to break down the anxiety and fear that people have about difference.
Yes. And you're right, and that difference comes in multiple different forms. It's not just LGBTI identities. Inclusion benefits everyone, and that's what we're ultimately aiming for, of course.
Of course,
Yeah. All right, I've got one more question for you, Alex, before we wrap up. So what I'm going to do is give you a magic rainbow wand, and you get to wave this wand, and you're going to paint a picture for what would be the ideal situation in 20 years' time from now, that you see in sport and from the community and everything like that. So I'm going to give it over to you, and you're going to paint us a picture for what you see.
See, I noticed you're using the magic rainbow wand rather than the glitter cannon that I've been requesting for about 4 years.
One day.
Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if no one ever had to come out? Wouldn't it be great if no one ever felt they had to explain or justify who they were? That's, I don't know, that to me, in 20 years' time, maybe that's what it will be. The questions will be about, growing up and marrying the person you love.
Yeah.
Not, we won't be stuck in this this notion that we're socializing kids to be a certain way from the beginning of their lives onwards. That the battle's already more difficult because percentage-wise we're not going to be part of the major group in society. But boy, if you don't have to battle against an upbringing of socialization where you are raised to be a certain person in a certain way, then that would be a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
I often think, members of the community who become confident about who they are, trust me, they're probably more with it and more connected with who they are than almost anyone else, because they had to overcome all of their upbringing to be that person. And, the strength that takes, to do that is pretty, to me, absolutely astounding. And, and I think in particular now with, people who are identifying as non-binary.
Mm.
There's just there's been so much change in the last few years.
Yeah.
In particular, there's been an opportunity for people to express themselves in a way that probably wasn't even thought of or heard of 5 years ago.
Mm.
So, in 20 years' time, it would be nice that people were able to live their genuine and their own lives the way that they want to, rather than the way that people think they should.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I actually just had this discussion with someone this morning that we see these massive social changes that are happening. And although there's still resistance, that's going to keep going. And that's so good to see. And at least in our sport world, at least, those traditional structures that sport has put up for years and years and years has no choice but to change soon. So, it's coming, and as you say, hopefully in 20 years' time, it's the norm. Kids and everybody is just able to be who they want to be, and there's no preconception on what that is, and people can just express themselves how they want.
Yeah, I think that it'll be so interesting to see that. I would love to have, that sort of, the magic spyglass to actually see what that looks like in 20 years' time.
Yeah.
But I suspect that I will be as surprised in 20 years' time as I am about now from 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, you think back 20 years as to where we were and how much has changed, and we probably can't even appreciate what it's going to be like in 20 years yet, and it's going to be a nice ride to see what happens.
It is. And I would also finish by saying that there have been some people who have truly amazed me by being so open to change. People that I wouldn't have expected in a certain way part of this journey. There's been some people who I, in my own mind, had thought would think a certain way, and I've been surprised, usually in a very positive way, by just how open and being receptive to hearing something which is beyond their usual experience. And that's really refreshing, and it's comforting, because you think, okay, there are those, in some ways, hidden allies out there.
Absolutely. It shows that mindsets can change, and it gives us all hope, and it's always nice when that happens.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, Alex. Well, we'll wrap it up, because knowing us, we'll talk all day if not. But thank you for joining us, and those insights are really, really interesting, and we look forward to seeing what will happen in the future.
You're the best, Chris.
All right.
See ya. Thank you.